Okay, here's a quick and dirty Deep and Hawk video for John Sartorious. This is his new polished stainless steel custom tilt column going in his 59 Hawk. The stock steering column and steering box. The steering box was not removed, but fortunately the steering column is a bolt-on steering column, so it's got a isolator and a pin flex joint down in the bottom where it's bolted on. So rather than have a column now that was literally about 40 inches long, we are now replacing that with this aftermarket street rod polished stainless steel tilt column that will replace everything in the Studebaker as far as everything goes. Now on the end of that, it's got a what they call a double D. It's a 3/4 inch shaft diameter with the edges put in. The double D is a standard in the street rod industry, or you could run a spline shaft, but the double D is nice because it gives you some adjustability. So the Studebaker shaft was cut off, and because it was hollow and I wanted to make it as strong as possible, the ID of the Studebaker column shaft was 1/2 inch. So I took a 1/2 inch rod and cut it off a 1/4 inch shorter than the cut-off piece. Pressed the rod in, it actually slid in, but there's a little bit of interference in there, so pushed the rod in so it was recessed 1/8 of an inch on each end, and then did a rosette. You can see that there, a rosette weld on each end, so it now becomes a solid rod. I don't have to run a horn button through it because that's in the new rod, but I wanted to make it as strong as possible because I was going to mill the round part of the Studebaker shaft off to the double D spec that you can see here. Put that in the milling machine and took it down to the right spec, and then the way this works is you can slide it in, but there's no real slop in it, so it works out real well. Plus on the part itself, where this is, there will be I will drill and tap a hole in it, put a lock nut on it, and I'm going to weld the lock nut, weld the nut on it so it's got more thread source on it. We'll get the column adjusted to where it's at the perfect comfort level for your hands and when it's tilted so you have clearance on the dash and everything, to get it at the right length. And then we will put a pointed Allen screw in there with another nut to lock it into place. Tighten that up, and that will actually put a mark in the double D, and then you slightly countersink that, reassemble it, put it in position, and that will lock the column so it doesn't have a fore and aft movement to it, so you can't pull hard on the wheel and have things start sliding out on you. What is interesting about this aftermarket column is the diameter of the tube is about, I want to say maybe a 1/16 of an inch. It's not 1/8 of an inch, but about a 1/16 of an inch smaller in diameter than the stock Studebaker tube. But the stock Studebaker hanger, you actually tighten it up with a cross bolt. So what we're going to do here on this is we're going to make a kind of a sleeve. It won't be out of tape, but it'll be out of a real thin plastic that I can wrap around and slide into this bracket. So when this is in position and you clamp it down tight, it will take a nice bite on the tube, but it won't scar the tube up real bad. I'd like to leave the thing as nice as possible. Another thing about this aftermarket that is really nice is it comes already pre-wired. And this pre-wiring is for a Chevrolet type turn signal wiring switch. So I pulled all the old wiring out of the Studebaker column, and it's just loose, and I have ordered, it'll be here tomorrow, I have ordered a plug assembly which has got it's got both the male and female, but I need the female half and all the little bits on it, so I can put all the wires onto the female part of the plug and just plug this in and we'll be done. So that part will be really well. There is a stainless steel adapter that goes on so that we can put this custom steering wheel on. This is John's choice of steering wheel, so it's real cool, and I like it because they've got a little acid-etched lazy S on it. But it does take an adapter, and the adapter that came with it was from a aftermarket company called foreversharp.com, and they make different sizes. This one, we needed to get the Chevy adapter because this aftermarket column has a Chevy spline on it. But they do also make the Ford that also fits the Studebaker, and I have one of those, and I'm working on a project where the stock Studebaker steering wheel can be bolted onto a GM or an aftermarket column that has the GM splines. You can take a stock Studebaker wheel and put it on a column like this. So what I'm trying to do is trying to make, I don't want to say a kit, but I'm trying to develop it so that you can put a Studebaker steering wheel on a tilt column and add that to your Studebaker later on. I got the polished stainless steel adapter ring. One of the problems with the stainless steel adapter ring was that it left quite a bit of a gap, and this does come in different widths. So you can, depending on which column you got and where your nut ends up with your splines, this is the standoff, it leaves a different amount of space here. And it left, as you can see here, this original groove here, that it left a gap that was better than 1/4 of an inch, and it just didn't look real well. Rather than do all sorts of machining on the hub to move the wheel in, these come with different width spacers. And as you can see, this spacer, this is the same width there. But what I was able to do with this was to take one of the thin spacers, and I cut the center of it out and put it in a press, and actually pressed the one spacer inside the other spacer. So yeah, there's a line there, but it does fill that gap up, so you've got a nice tight gap here, so it's nice and clean, so that works out real well. Here's your tilt control. This is the turn signal control, and there's a 4-way flasher on the other side. So all in all, this project, I was kind of dreading doing it on John's 59 Hawk because it was going to be the most complicated, and I had visions of having to bend over the fender and cut the column and do all the double D work or put a Borgeson U-joint in it. But it turns out I don't need to put a Borgeson U-joint in it because it already has a flex coupler. It already has a slide feature. My modifications to this was to just shorten the column, make it into a double D so that it slides in. The only other modification I have left to do before I install it all is to actually weld the stop on it. I could probably just thread this and put this in, and it would hold on to it. I'm not sure about welding the nut on to get more purchase on there, but just to get that so we can adjust this perfectly where it fits. And that can even be a customer preference. What's nice about that is by loosening this hanger clamp, and it's a stock hanger clamp, so everything goes in the same position, and I'm using the same alignment pieces, so I don't have to worry anything about the alignment. But by loosening this up with that plastic sleeve on there, loosening a set screw over here, you could actually adjust this column in and out, get it to the perfect spot, and then tighten it all down, and you're good to go. So that's my project for this weekend. With John's car, I was getting this steering column in, mounting the power brake booster and master cylinder, fixing the solenoid wiring and whatever little wiring things I've got left to do, and getting his passenger power window to work right. And his car's done and going back home. So the project's coming close to being completed, and it's real positive. So I'm a happy camper this weekend. Got some things done. So I'll cut it off here and say, talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.